heard humans described as the technology of this planet. And I thought that was a really interesting way to describe how our non physical, our spiritual selves interact with this physical world and the purpose that we serve, why we're here, what is it that we can accomplish, how can we accomplish it, all those types of things. And with technology evolving the way that it is, specifically with AI threatening people's jobs in the workplace, all these conversations and narratives that there are about our economic systems, how we manage the actual functionality and compensate people for the value that they bring to this planet, being jobs, functions. I thought this was a really fascinating way to tie some of these things together. Human beings are the technology of this planet. And I think that applies at scale, how human beings apply and interact with the earth. How do we use the resources that are available to us here to help us live, survive, pass on our genes to the next generation, et cetera, et cetera. Not to get too philosophical with why we're here at this juncture, but also it applies on an individual level of what is the function of an individual human being? How are they being compensated? How do they invest their time and their energy on this planet? And that is very similar to the physical technologies that we actually understand, whether it's AI or it's cell phones or it's internet or the printing press. There's a few different aspects or ways to describe technology. What function does it perform? What does it actually do? And actually, I'm going to share my whiteboard here. So, technology, and yeah, come along with me as I finger type this on the screen. Technology, you have a function. What does it actually do? And how? This speaks to implementation. Oh, I'm going to run out of space. Implementation. How does that piece of technology actually perform the function? How does the cell phone actually do what it's intended to do? How do you get it into the hands of the people who are going to utilize that technology? And if you think back to cell phones, way back when they first were invented and distributed, we always had landlines in people's homes. They were connected by wires. And then there was a step towards mobility when you could get a car phone. And then it was a cell phone that you could walk around with. And then it evolved into a smartphone. But the thing that made it more relevant to society and to everybody at scale was cost. This was the key thing, because before everybody had a cell phone, a few people had a cell phone because it was exclusive. It was an expensive thing. Not everybody could afford it, and it wasn't available to everybody in society. We had to scale the technology to a point where it was actually possible for people to access it. And now, to tie back into the point about human beings being the technology of the planet, look at the workforce, look at the functions that we perform, look at what we do as human beings on this planet with whatever tools that we have. I think of a kitchen or a restaurant where we hire chefs, we hire people to take orders, we hire people to serve the food, we hire people to clear the tables. Those things all cost a business money. And we now have machines that can make food. And it started with fast food, I believe. I haven't checked that, but I believe it started with simple like burger flipping, making burgers, making drinks. We have machines. And there are restaurants, in North America. I'm not too familiar with the technology in, places like Japan and China, but I understand they're generally ahead as far as implementation, at least, if not the actual technologies. But we now have restaurants in North America that are exclusively robotic. You go in and there's no human beings back there. They make all the food, they take the orders, they collect the money, and it's much cheaper for the business. The cost has gone down. And why isn't every restaurant employing machinery to make its food. And putting aside the argument for just a moment about the actual artistry of making food, the human touch, the love that goes into it, it's just an example for now of a machine performing a function that a human being can perform. I've seen similar examples in bottle depots or other manufacturing facilities. We've already seen machines take over assembly line production in so many ways. Why didn't every company adopt it as soon as the technology came out and as soon as it was created? Why isn't every bottle depot sorting with a machine? It's because it costs money. It's because it costs a lot of money. I know somebody who runs a manufacturing facility, and they had to fly back and forth to Germany and Italy and different parts of Europe to get the machinery that they actually wanted. And this was in the last 5 years because it wasn't readily available everywhere in the world. It cost a lot of money. It required a level of investment. The economics had to make sense. But as soon as those technologies become more readily available, when the programming becomes better, when the machinery becomes cheaper to produce, more companies will adopt those technologies and implement them in their businesses, their restaurants, and things like that. There's a restaurant near my place that is closing the kitchen early because they can't find a chef. They literally can't find a chef to work an evening shift reliably. So they just close the kitchen, and it's in a grocery store, so it's not exclusively a restaurant. But for the restaurant portion of the grocery store, they just close the kitchen because they can't find somebody. It's costing them too much, right? Because they don't want to, if they increase their wage, they could find a qualified person, but they can't afford to increase their wage level to attract the right person to work that shift. They're choosing the cost. They're choosing to sacrifice the revenue that they could potentially generate through the restaurant rather than increase the cost of operating it by paying somebody more money. Now go all the way back to the workforce, and on a larger scale, the functions that human beings perform in society, it's becoming more expensive to pay a person to do menial basic tasks that AI can do. So businesses are choosing to implement cheaper solutions to help their businesses survive and to run. Human beings in the next era of humanity are going to be asked to perform different functions in society. We're not going to be asked to file things anymore. We're not going to be asked to answer phone calls as much. We're not going to be asked to schedule appointments as much. We're not going to be asked to do spell check, right? We've already stopped that function. There's no specialist spell checkers or grammar checkers in society. Machines have been doing that for 20, 30, 40 years now. We've accepted that transition of human beings don't do grammar checks on documents anymore. And that function is performed by machines. It's been automated. This is not to say that all AI implementation should be accepted and is universally going to be implemented. This is simply a commentary on the changing nature of the function of the human being in society. The technology is evolving. The AI technology is evolving. The automation technology is evolving. The computation technology is evolving. And it's forcing human beings as a technology in this physical world and in this place that we understand as planet Earth to evolve to different functions. That's it. And no, okay, maybe that's not as basic as it is, but that's one way of looking at this. The workforce is changing. The things that the baby boomers come to work believing that they need to hire a human being to do are changing. The simple tasks are no longer cheaper to perform or to fulfill by paying a human being. They're becoming cheaper to have a computer perform them for us. And yes, this is going to result in job loss for some people. Yes, this is going to result in a shift in business operations. but it's also opening the doors to new functions for human beings to perform, whether it's maintaining or interacting with those systems, or it's just something completely different. Because 400 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever it was, human beings used to make things out of metal and fire. We used to forge swords and shields and all kinds of things. And we needed specialists to do that. Today, we have machines to do that because it's cheaper, it's faster, it's more efficient. They can do more things, all kinds of benefits to having non human beings perform a function that was performed 500 years ago. And we don't have to look 500 years in the future this time. This technology, specifically AI, is evolving so fast, it iterates so quickly that the learning curve is going to be much steeper. It's not going to take hundreds of years this time, like it did with different technologies in the past, whether that was the wheel or the printing press or the radio or even the internet, which was even much faster than those. But this is going to be even faster than the internet. And what's going to be key is how we as human beings adapt to those changing circumstances, to those changing needs, and adapting to fit into new functions that we can perform on this planet and receive compensation for and be valued for. We, as a unified species of human beings, are going to be challenged in a way that we've never been challenged before. And we as individuals are similarly going to be challenged in ways that we've never been challenged before, because this is so rapid. And I don't study it every single day, but I follow it closely, and I know that it's happening on an exponential level that most human brains, I don't think, can comprehend, because we're just so used to linear change. We're so used to time steadily passing in a linear fashion. We're so used to steady paychecks. We're used to regular programming on our televisions. We're used to the days going by at the same rate. And we're not used to shifts happening as rapidly as this thing called AI evolves, which is, again, on an exponential level. Now, we're in the messy middle part right now. Maybe not even the middle. We're in the messy part where we haven't quite gotten to understanding the functions that we as human beings can perform in our societies and in our workplaces. We're figuring it out right now. And I think that there's a lot more coming. I think it's going to be very rapid, especially if somebody cracks AGI, artificial general intelligence. If one of these big corporations does it, I don't even understand the scope of the shift that's going to happen, but it is going to be dramatic. I don't think that we're receiving all the information about the type of job loss that can actually occur in the marketplace and what's going to happen. The forecasts are that the wealth gaps are going to increase in our society. And let's not get me started on the squeezing of the monetary system and the fiat systems, and how the governments and central banks of the world have squeezed our monetary systems to their limits, where they're just printing money and manufacturing ways to work around debt that they'll never have to pay off, they'll never have to be accountable for, that they can just walk away from and have no consequences for. And I think that is a dangerous thing for human beings, but let's not go too far down that track right now. The point remains about human beings as the technology of this planet. And if that concerns you, okay, at least you're paying attention. At least you're aware of, on some level, of what's going on. But the point also is that you will always be in charge of your individual human experience. You will always be in your own movie, perceiving what you are of the world, interacting with it through your senses, through your body, making decisions for yourself, your family, your community, those around you, and deciding what to do next. And it's going to be a challenging time, and I get overwhelmed by this a lot, but I do think that there are tremendous opportunities for all of us to adapt to the changing circumstances, to the changing technologies in our society, and to evolve as the technology as well. So don't forget that potential that you have within you, that all of us have within us, to bring value to this next era of humanity and how we exist on this planet. I think I'll pause there today. Thanks for watching.